guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball, and I'm trying to explain the hardest concept I've ever tried to explain in a video before. This is take like number 15 or something ridiculous. Hopefully this is the last one. Okay, what I'm going to do here is talk about, in black, I'm going to represent potential, and in purple, I'm going to talk about actual. So potential would be your son's ceiling, what he's capable of doing. In purple is where he actually is today. We're going to talk about the relationship of those, and most importantly, we're going to talk about the lies that families are fed now by this big industry of travel baseball, youth travel baseball. You're not going to like part of this, but I'm going to do my best to tell you the truth and what I think a lot of families need to hear. I'm not trying to be discouraging in this video. I'm not trying to squash any dreams. I believe that the more you understand reality, the better decisions you can make, and actually the closer you can help your son to get to his potential. What the industry feeds you today is that the more games your son plays, the more lessons you take your kid to, the more money you spend, the more time you spend, the more weekends away from home you spend, that the more you increase your son's odds of playing college baseball or potentially even Major League Baseball. You're being told that has to happen at 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old. That is 100% not true. Why would I be telling you this? Because I know there are a lot of parents out there who are almost panicked at 8 when your kids are 8, 10, 12 years old by what's going on around you. Say, for example, in my situation, my son's 7 years old. My son's, he's pretty good, but is he as good of a player as he could be? He's not. There could be a 7-year-old down the street who has the same physical abilities, same athletic abilities, who's a way better player than my son because he plays all year round. A kid that my son played 17 games this year, and during his season, our team got together like twice a week, and after that, it's been like playing wiffle ball in the yard a couple times a week, once in a while. Am I concerned that my son is never going to catch up to this other kid? I'm not, and here's why. Here's what my son's athletic life might look like, okay? Here's his potential when he's 7. And out here is his potential when he's 18. Here's the first thing, the first lie we need to squelch. I don't control what my son's potential is, and neither does he. My son's capable of doing what he was capable of doing the day he was born. The only thing that controls potential is your maker. When you were created, you had a potential. At sports and anything else. Sorry if you don't like that, but it's true. Because the only thing that we can control, as either athletes ourselves or parents of an athlete or coaches of an athlete, the only thing we can control is how close to the potential we come. And the thing is that it doesn't need to happen early on. If my son right now has this potential and he works as hard as he can and he plays and practices 5 days a week for like 8 months out of the year, if this is where he is today, well, he might be really close to his potential, what he's capable of at 7. Now, this line goes up because as a 7-year-old, well, every year he's going to grow. He's going to get bigger and stronger. So what he's capable of at 10 is not the same as what he's capable of at 7. We can all agree with that, right? Like you don't put the average 7-year-old on the field with a 10-year-old or an average 9-year-old on the field with a 12-year-old because that 12-year-old is bigger, stronger, more physically developed, et cetera, et cetera. That kid, the older, stronger, bigger kid is going to be better naturally. It's what happens when you grow. But at some point you stop growing, right? And people catch up to one another. If my son over the next 5 years doesn't love baseball as much as he loves something else, maybe my son loves basketball, soccer. He plays soccer right now. Maybe he loves soccer. So over the next couple of years, he doesn't play any organized baseball, and maybe he just plays soccer, but maybe he also likes to lift weights and like do things like that. He's athletic. He just doesn't play baseball anymore. Maybe from 7 years old, which would be right here, we'll put a 7 there. That's at 7 years old. Maybe from 7 to 14, He doesn't really play baseball. We play in the backyard. Sometimes we get together as a family and play wiffle ball games. So, but maybe his ability, this is his potential on this the black. The black line's the potential. But maybe his actual kind of goes like this. And there's 14. So at 14, he's capable of being, if he played baseball all the time and did everything that he could to practice and play, he could be this good, but he's this good. Okay? Can all that makes sense to all of you, right? Because he doesn't play. But if he played all the time, he could be that good. The kid down the street with the same athletic ability, exact same athletic ability. Maybe my son has I'm going to use this example. What if my son was a twin, and one twin liked soccer and he was this good, and the other identical twin played baseball all year round? He'd be better. He'd be a better player because he plays. But then at 14, my son decides that he loves baseball. For whatever reason, he just decides, I really like baseball. I want to quit soccer, or I at least just want to play soccer in season, and the rest of the year I'm going to play baseball. Here's the misperception. This is where the youth travel ball industry gets you, and they deceive you. They're telling you that if you let this happen, if you let your son do something else besides baseball, he'll never get it to his potential. He'll never get that time back. He'll never become as good as he can be. He'll never be as good as the player down the street who plays baseball 8 months, 10 months out of the year. That's a lie. It's a lie. If this is my kid, and he loves baseball up until 7 and practices, plays all the time, but then he stops playing baseball for a team, doesn't get lessons, doesn't hit on his own, just plays in the yard once in a while, he's doing something else, he's playing soccer. But then right here, he decides that he loves baseball. Guess what will happen? His ceiling didn't move. What he's capable of never changed. It didn't come down to here. His ceiling didn't go down to there. No, his ceiling is still the black. What he's capable of is still in black. That's never moved, no matter what he's done, no matter what else he chooses to do with his life. My son could choose to play video games and get overweight and have and not do anything to advance his athletic abilities. But if at 14 he decides that he really wants to give it a go, and he starts getting in shape, and he goes to the weight room, and he gets on the field, and he's eating like a big leaguer should eat, and doing all the things that a big leaguer should do, he still has the same ceiling. That didn't change. Outside of an illness or an injury or whatever, his ceiling never changed. So if in this hypothetical, if my son at 14 decided that he wanted to try to be a Major League Baseball player, his ceiling is still the same. What he's capable of is still the same. It won't be a linear growth, but he will eventually move his way up, and based on how hard he works, he can get back up to where at 17 years old, he's all the way back up to what his ceiling, what his potential could be. It might have taken him a couple years to get there. Now, why is that? That's because if you haven't hit a baseball on a regular basis, it's going to take you a couple years or at least a couple months to get your timing back and things like that. It's going to take you some time to figure out pitch recognition. It's going to take you some time to get good at ground balls or running routes in the outfield or whatever. This is the lie. The lie is that if you don't field 100 ground balls every day of your life from 8 years old to 18 years old, that you're not going to be as good as you could be. Not true. It's not true. I'm going to give you a reference outside of baseball to make this make sense. If my son has the ability, we have some runners in our family. I was a pretty good runner. My dad ran Division I track. My younger sister ran track in college at the Division II level. Just say that my son has the ability to be a 6'7" runner. That's the best he can get. If we get all the, if he trains with a great track coach, some of the best speed and agility coaches in the country, he worked his tail off in the weight room. Just say he looks like a football player, like a lot of these sprinters in the Olympics. But the best he can ever run is a 6'7", because that's what God created him to. Best he could ever do is run a 6'7". If he doesn't try very hard and just kind of plays and never really works on his speed, he might be a 7'2" runner. But because he really works at it, he becomes this 6'7" runner. Well, if the kid down the street has a future as an Olympic athlete, Olympic sprinter, and that kid down the street works as hard as my son, he's going to be a better sprinter. He's going to be faster. Here's something that might upset you, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. Because it's true. You have to understand the truth here if you're going to be able to make good decisions for your kid and help your kid and be realistic with the way you can help your kid. If the kid down the street is the son of 2 Olympic sprinters and he's got the genes of an Olympic sprinter, at 18 years old, this is my son's ceiling as a 6'7" potential runner. Well, not that people in the Olympics run the 60-yard dash, but if they did, maybe the next door neighbor has the ability, the God-given ability to run a 6'2", 60. World record type speed. Well, if my son works his tail off, does everything he can possibly do, he will become that 6'7" runner. The neighbor boy, if he doesn't like track and doesn't do anything athletically, he still might be able to roll out of bed and go to gym class and be in the same gym class as my son and run a 6'7". He's capable of running a lot better, but if he never even tries, obviously not as like a 30-year-old, he won't be able to do that, but as a 16 to 18-year-old, he might be able to run a 6'7" without even really trying, without really practicing or working at it. Whereas my son runs a 6'7" and gives it everything he's got. But then as soon as this kid, this Olympic sprinter, decides to train, guys, if he never trained in his life, but at 17 decides he wants to train and he trains hard for like 6 months, he might not be a 6'2" runner, but he might be a 6'3" or 6'4" runner. Maybe with another 6 or 12 months of training, he becomes the 6'2" runner. You don't need to send your kids, you don't need to play baseball all year round at 8, 10, 12 years old for your kid to reach his abilities, to reach his potential, his ceiling. Eventually, he'll need to get there. But that's how people go to a Division III school and then end up playing in the big leagues. They just were nowhere near their ceiling when they were 16, 17 and getting recruited for one reason or another. And guys, your strength plays a big part in this. Mason Miller's got a great story. The guy that I think he's a closer for the A's, or the late inning reliever for the A's, who played Division III baseball. He didn't throw very hard in high school, but a lot of things change. You can read his story. I'm not going to get into all the details. I don't frankly know every detail, but there were quite a few things that happened. A, he put on a lot of weight, and B, there was something else physically with him, with his physical health, that he figured out. It might have been, was it diabetes? I don't know. He was nowhere near his potential in high school, but the potential was always there. If he did the same things, whatever he did from 18 to 22 when he got drafted throwing 100, if he did those same things when he was 15 and 16, he probably would have been throwing low to mid 90s at least in high school when he got recruited, and probably would have played for Vanderbilt or LSU or wherever instead of playing Division III baseball. The ceiling never changed. The potential was always there. He just wasn't close to it. But that's the beauty of college baseball. Sometimes you get somewhere and someone can unlock some things that were not unlocked for you before. Don't fall into the trap that you have to spend thousands of dollars a year and all of your weekends and everything else doing all these things when your kid is 8, 10, 12 years old. They don't have to do that. The original thing I drew of my son, please keep this in your mind. Lock this in your mind. If this is your kid's potential, if your kid's potential as he grows is this, and right there is when he's 18 years old, like that's what he's capable of being when he's 18, he could not take baseball seriously until he's 16, and in fact not even really play baseball. He can play other sports, but when you play a backyard wiffle ball game, this is sort of what his talent looks like. And then at 16 years old, he decides, this is what I want to do. I want to spend the time and effort on this. In a 2-year span, by working in the weight room and by getting all the reps that he needs to get and all these things, he'll catch up. he will catch up. Within a couple years, he could be maybe not at his ceiling, but really close to it. And that could be a really good player that gets to play in college ball. And then once he's there, he continues to get better and continues to get closer to his ceiling. You can make up ground really quickly here. Really quickly. That's what I want you to understand. That's why I shot this 15-minute video. I'm sorry that it's so long. I hope you got something out of this. Please feel free to ask me questions if you want to debate this, if you don't understand it, if you don't, whatever. But all these things you can do with your kids. Your kids can get better by getting in the weight room. Your kids can get better by doing something to work on their speed and agility. Your kid can get better by getting a lot of reps. Your kid can get better by taking a lot of swings. Does their ceiling ever change? It doesn't. But what changes is you get them closer. So if you can establish a good work ethic in your child, you can help them to achieve whatever they want to achieve in their life, whether it's on an athletic field or somewhere else. But you can't change their ceiling. Just because they're playing all these games at 8, 10, and 12 years old, you're not increasing their chances of playing in the major leagues unless you're just helping your kid get closer to their ceiling and stay there. But if your kid doesn't want to, or you can't afford it, or you want your kid wants to do other stuff, your kid wants to play multiple sports, your kid wants to take guitar lessons, let them. And when it comes time to get serious about it, even if they're 15, 16, 17 years old, they can still, with 1 to 2 good years of focused effort, get close enough to their ceiling to give themselves a chance at the next level. And then they'll keep getting better. And if they keep working at it and keep getting opportunities, they can still reach their ceiling. This was a long one. Hope you guys enjoyed it.